Hello, everybody. Scott Golden here with the Pro Wrestling Logic YouTube channel and the World Class Championship Wrestling Review Series. We are into the month of October the 20th, specifically the day of 1984. And 1984 shaping up to be better a year than I imagined it to be with the changes in the World Wrestling Federation. Hulkamania has begun, and many people said World Class started to drop off. I don't see that drop quite yet. We do have a lot of first run action here, some amazing promos, and some really good stuff. So, in general, this is an action-packed show. We move to Kelly Kiniski, who, again, is a guy who's kind of been back and forth throughout this iteration of his time in World Class. Never really been a main guy. Always kind of a guy who is one step above enhancement talent, maybe in the area. Anyway, he's going against Mike Reed, so they're trying to heat him up for something, maybe even a house show run. But Kiniski manages to take the early part of the match. Reed comes back with some arm ringers, arm bars, and the like. Kiniski is good with strikes when he can get them off. Now, the problem is Kiniski does struggle to maintain, I guess, a series of series of victories, and also a series of momentum even in matches. High hip toss by Reed, and Kiniski slows things down, uses the ring post and turnbuckle and the like. Kiniski slows things down for a minute, tries to get as much action as he can. This is actually maybe there's a few extra minutes of advertisements, as usually the shows run 44 to 47 minutes. This is a 41-minute program. Anyway, back suplex by Kiniski, and Kiniski is a guy who really has a lot of things that are going in his direction, but just never hits on all cylinders. A drop kick shrugged off by Kiniski, and he comes back. Of course, his father, Gene Kiniski, former NWA champion, had to be a lot of pressure to be the son of a former world champion, especially when world champions are not as plentiful as they are now. I think we're on the 53rd, 54th champion in the NWA, National Wrestling Alliance, since 1948, so 70-year history, and only 54 men, I think it is, have held that championship, multiple times, obviously. Anyway, we move to the I guess swinging neck breaker by Kiniski gives him a bit of an advantage, and then you see him go for the dropping, the leaping knee drop. Does not get what he wants there. Surprising that Reed gets as much offense as he does. So maybe it's just a sign that they wanted a competitive match on television. Sometimes opening television with a competitive match draws new fans in. Maybe that's what they're trying to do, because nobody's really getting terribly over in a match like this, at least in my estimation. But suffice to say, you actually see Kiniski having to call a few spots here, and they hit shoulder to shoulder, and then we see a spinning backbreaker by Kiniski, 1, 2, and gets the 3 count. Kiniski does get a victory there. We move on quickly to Norvell Austin against Buck Zumhoff. Zumhoff, a former tag team champion, trying to get some fire back for him, I suppose, right after that tag team championship lost last week with the Long Riders. Zumhoff and Austin have a very basic match. Zumhoff tries to use wrestling acumen early. They spend a good several minutes working arm holds and hammer locks and the like. Back to the arm drag several times. Very basic match, but Zumhoff obviously been around, was all the way around until getting arrested in 2014, was around from 1972 when training with Ron Gagne until 2014, so long-term career. Uh, then we see him with the head scissors takeover slash kind of holding him in there, and Austin having a bit of trouble. Norvell Austin, Coco Ware, both predominantly in the Southern style Tennessee area, but coming here to World Class for a run for a couple of months, and we're going to see more tag teams come through. Tag team wrestling, not a huge thing in Texas, but by '84, more of a thing than it previously had been, for sure. Um, and Austin hits with a big headbutt before going back after everything, and then we see a attempted high knee that turns into a half calf drop kick by Austin. Miscommunication there. So if you're a Botchamania fan, you might want to go out of your way to check that out. Needless to say, not a terribly wonderful showcase match if that's what they were going for with this particular contest. Shoulder breaker by Austin, and he gets things going in his general direction for the next little while. They go back to submissions, nerve holds, and the like, which kind of at this point a little surprising. Coco Ware makes his way out to support his partner. Of course, Ware being the partner of Norvell Austin in the Pretty Young Things. Not really a character or a team that I got a lot of. Anyway, fire up by Zumhoff, who manages to hit hip tosses and drop kicks and the like. Sidestep by Austin to cut him off there. And then we see a big body slam attempted, but a victory roll by Zumhoff and gets the victory. So Buck Zumhoff, one half of the former tag team champions, does come back with a victory. Beautiful promo up next as Jake Roberts and Chris Adams talk about the Von Erichs. Talk about being the World Six-Man Tag Team Champions, led by Gary Hart. I mean, imagine that stable. Jake Roberts, Gino Hernandez, and Chris Adams. Adams talks about being sick of being in the shadow of the Von Erichs, sick of not getting title shots, wanting to be at the best. Gary Hart says that you got to be at the top of your game and aggressive to be a champion, and that's what he taught his band to be in Adams. And look at what they're doing now. They're the six-man tag team champions. Chris Adams, and Jake Roberts versus Jules Strongbow and George Weingroff. Up next is your semi-main event. Obviously, in the previous weeks, we have seen various pairings of these gentlemen, but now in a tag team match, Gary Hart, the third man in, so to speak, as the manager of the bunch, and Hart is trying to get his troops rallied because he knows that it'll be a reasonable challenge, but not something that they can't overcome. Early dominance by Strongbow with chops and the like. Jake Roberts on the ground begging off, and Jake is always willing to sell. Short punch by Roberts, and then we see the square off. Adams back in the ring, and he goes after the Native American in Strongbow, and cuts the ring off a pretty good bit. Strongbow is not getting the response he wants to his offensive maneuvers. Gary Hart happy at ringside. Strongbow takes actually the majority of the match, oddly enough. The heels are dominant throughout, and Weingroff stuck on the ring apron. Strongbow does make a short-term comeback. Tag off finally to Weingroff. Weingroff comes in. They didn't do as much with a hot tag as you want. Tag lukewarm at best. Weingroff comes in and goes heads up, but we see Adams in there now with a bit more of kind of the backdrop and the quicker moving action. Not that Jake can't move quick, but Jake is I guess I wouldn't say better at pacing, but more even keeled with his pacing. Anyway, tag back to Strongbow, perhaps a little too quickly. Strongbow manages to try to ring the bell, but doesn't get the job done. Slingshot into the corner, right into a fist by Jake Roberts, and a tag off there. Roberts back in legally, obviously, probably the more, I don't know that I would say featured aspect of Gary Hart's bunch, but certainly Roberts definitely the voice of the bunch, except for Hart himself. Um, and Jake kind of comes in, tries to get illegal advantages when he can. Switch off to Adams holding the chin lock for quite a bit and hook style clothesline. Adams maybe a little slower now that he's a heel, more deliberate. Speaking of slow, Jake always measuring his maneuvers and does so quite well. Jake manages to try to keep things going in the direction of his team. Match goes a little longer than one would imagine. They've probably gone about 8 or 10 minutes. Jake misses with the attempted body slam. Weingroff comes in, clears house. Odd that Weingroff would be the baby face of this particular tandem, to be the one to clear house. You'd think Strongbow with the stereotypical, sadly, Native American comeback would be the one with the babyface comeback, but that is not the case. He takes the majority of the heat, and that's that. But then we see an attempted suplex by Jake. Doesn't get all he wants. Does do the drape across the ropes deal. Jake tries to slow things down. Says that he is willing to do anything to get the advantage, and then we see the heels lay out the baby faces here. Super kick by Adams leads to the victory, and then we move to the missing link and Kerry Von Erich as the main event of the broadcast. They only have about 2 or 3 minutes here, actually. Link goes for the headbutts early and does what he needs to do, sends Kerry to the outside. Kerry Von Erich devastated by being cast to the outside of the ring. I think he might have actually just done a really good sell job, because the actual throw doesn't look like much, but he's out there and pretty loopy for a while. Discus punch on the missing Link. Link bails out to the floor. Link not a fan of the Von Erich discus punch by any stretch of the imagination. Attempts to throw Kerry over the top rope. Kerry does the skin the cat. Meanwhile, tries to skin the cat. Does not actually skin the cat. More kind of mutilates the cat. But anyway, roll up 1, 2, and 3 as a drop kick into Akbar. And then a roll-up leads to a victory for Kerry. So Kerry Von Erich victorious over the missing Link. Akbar in to try and help the Link get an extra advantage, and we see some brawling there. But we'll close out the 20th of October 1984 with a win for Kerry Von Erich. Kevin comes in to avenge his brother, and that's where we go.